Hey, I'm late. Welcome to number 4 installation of the Insights. Struggle for power. I hope my friends still come. Hey, sorry I'm late.
Oops, keep doing that. There we go.
Hey.
Hey.
How you feeling?
I am good. How are you?
I am good as well. Thank you. Thank you.
It's wonderful news.
Alright, I'm sure Brandon will be here when he be's here. Okay, shall we?
Sure.
Alright. So this chapter is called The Struggle for Power. And it basically talks about the competition for that energy or power. So they've already been traveling for a day. This is their second day of traveling, and Will tells the narrator to stay alert and questions his faith of finding the future insights. Because you have to go through the insights in order to keep finding the insights. But it really, and I think that's the conclusion of the last chapter, like with the quantum theory, like you have to have that faith without the proof, so that the insights do keep coming, even when people will say, "Oh, there's no physical proof for this energy," or
Right.
Okay, so they're going to a place called Kula near Quilambaba, and it is a virgin forest, which means it's one of the oldest forests, and it has very few humans that pass through or interact with it, so it's very natured. So they're driving, they pass a gas station, and the narrator's like, oh, the man standing by his car looked like someone I might know. And the man was like going through his hood having these like car problems. So Will is like kind of scrutinizes the narrator, because when they started the ride, he's like, that's having the faith, is like going off of the coincidences, like continuing to go off of the coincidences, stopping to talk to people, and not being aloof, like sharing his experience, sharing what he's been through and what he knows about the insights. So the Dewey Yui, they stop, and the person's name is Chris Renault. And of course, as I speak with him, he is also looking for the manuscript. So the gas station owner tells them they could all camp there for the night. So Chris is in, well, they call her Renault. He teaches psychology and the field of conflict in Brazil. And his concentration was in human conflict. Specifically why we might treat each other so violently and have the urge to control and dominate others. He talks about when we have a conversation with people, we usually walk away feeling stronger or weaker. So sometimes when we're not conscious of that, we manipulate people into getting that energy. Sometimes I think it's the difference between being right and righteous. Like, it might be right to say something in the moment, but it's more righteous maybe to wait for someone to ask, or, just doing it in the right moment. I think I'll have a better example by the end. But, just trying to be right instead of, like, trying to help. And basically trying to get the person to admit, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, so that you gain the energy. Okay, so they go inside the house for dinner, and the man has a woman there who they assume is his wife, and a young girl who they assume is their daughter. So they start to eat, and Will drops his fork. Now, the girl doesn't immediately move to either grab his fork or go get Will a new one. So one of the parents basically scolds her and then she like snaps to, you know, grabbing or replacing the fork. That's when Reyno notices the energy exchange between the family, basically that the two parents or the two adults have the girl under their grasp. Then at another moment when the girl is going to serve them, she accidentally spills the narrator's water. And she kind of has an outburst, basically an emotional outburst. Yeah. And she is dismissed. But they then talk about the men and the women dominating the girl, bringing her psychological violence, which is her lashing out. So if this girl is not made aware of this, then that's probably how she'll continue to interact with all people in her environment, especially like when she does find someone she's romantically interested in, because that's the same kind of love that you're going to give to yourself and to others. Which can be passed through generations as well. So maybe how your parents interact with others you've picked up on, or you've done the reverse in order to try to keep it smooth in the house. And yeah, then I wrote how should she have navigated that, or whose responsibility is it in those moments, like when the water spills, to be calm? Like once the parents get up in a rage, you know, especially the girl being younger, it would be kind of hard for her to be calm and explain like, oh, I'm sorry, I spilled the water. I'll wipe it up and get a new one once the parents get upset. So I would say maybe in that situation, the girl might have to try consistently for that, from what I know in parents. But if the parents could be aware and learn better to extract the energy from the girl, that might help. That might be a therapy thing, though. What do you think?
I mean, that's really tough because since she's the daughter, like it's kind of like you can't really say anything because like those are your parents and you're living in their house. So that's a really tough spot because you can either like fight against them or like just brush it off and try not to let it bother you or try to have a conversation, but it just seems
Yeah,
like in this situation they wouldn't. I mean, who knows, but it seems like in this situation they would not be open to hearing like talking calmly about this kind of stuff.
yeah, she might have to circle back later to have that conversation. I also
Yeah.
think it's interesting. I don't know if she's the only child or not, but the only child, you know, in that situation at the moment. But I think when there's other people, or if there were more kids, they could be like, oh, you know, hey, she just spilled the water, or hey, I'll clean it up, you know, and get a new water, you know, to try to have ease tension in that situation. But I definitely think it was um, none of the other, like Will, the narrator, or Rainu. I don't think they really would have able to have stepped in that moment either. Maybe they also could have came back later, like before they left, and been like, be nice.
I mean, I know the narrator said like, "Oh, you don't have to be so hard on her."
Yeah,
He
yeah.
like slipped that in there real quick.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good. But okay. Will ignores my tone and begins to put Rainu on game. So they go back to the campsite, and um, that's when the narrator begins. Well, first Will asks the narrator, "Oh, have you been talking to Reno?" And the narrator's like, "Yeah, yeah." And Will's like, "Or has he been giving you a bunch of information and you're not really telling him anything?" That's when the narrator again realizes, okay, he also has to give in order to, you know, receive, continue to receive. So he goes and tells Reno about what else he saw on the mountain with Sarah and that weird scientist where they had their little energy exchange. You know, I say something and gain some of your energy, then you say something back and gain some of my energy, but not in positive ways, and like sucking, leeching kind of ways where you manipulate the person out of their energy.
Yeah.
So the narrator gives Raynell a copy of the third insight, Uh, and then the next morning, Reno heads over to Vicente, right?
Vicente.
Vicente. I don't know why I combined Vicente. Back to the research gardens and stuff like that. Then Will and narrator hop back on the road. They reflect on the narrator's affinity for mountains and how it builds up his energy. And the place they're about to stop at is the last place to go to get supplies before going deeper into the forest. So they stop at this place, the little grocery market, and they happen to run into Majorie again. And at first, this young man is kind of like yoking her up physically, like grabbing her. Like, no, don't speak with the narrator. She's like, it's okay, I know him. So when Will's like, oh, why don't you two catch up and grab lunch? So they go do that. And while they're having lunch, I just want to point out that the narrator says Majorie, when he was explaining what he had been through since seeing her, he's like, when she shows gratitude while looking him in the eyes, he notices how much better that makes him feel. But then she tells him about Robert Jensen, which I like, the physical representation of government and repression. You put that?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. That's good, though, yeah.
I was so excited to talk about this chapter because of Jensen. Like, let me
Go
know and I'll go in on that.
ahead, because I know you're going soon, so go ahead. I think you're fine to take it from there.
Okay, so yeah, Jensen, let's just start with him. He is like the whole like control, like he is controlling, like he's just the
Mm-hmm.
whole essence of what a controlling person is. He in what I took from it, because it turns out, and they don't realize at first, that he's working for the government and he is working towards his own gain, because
Right.
he will get access to the manuscript if he helps the government. But this is all kept as a secret because he's just like, oh, I'm here to protect everyone and you need to follow what I say. And he literally says, like, you have to be willing to do exactly as I say. And it's like, what?
I feel like more than once he said that.
Yeah, and it's like just blindly follow you because you're authoritative and you're telling me to.
And he uses it out of fear. He does it out of fear.
Yes, yes. All he wants to do is instill fear in everyone. He's like, there are dangerous people
Right.
out there. This is dangerous. And then the narrator questioned him, like, who's dangerous? And he's like, oh, there's people that are
Right.
dangerous.
Right.
Like, he can't
Right.
even tell because it's not true.
Yeah.
That was bugging me out because actually, when I first got back into the book, I was listening to the audiobook, and this was the chapter that really got me like, what? And I was writing everything down. But I mean, yeah, it's just like he was just like undermining the narrator and just like sucking all his energy out of him to gain control. And it actually reminded me a little bit of COVID, because the government's like Jensen's like, stay inside, you need to stay inside. And then with COVID, the government's like, you need to stay inside, and trying to make everyone so afraid
Right.
of each other and of this whole thing that's happening. And that drives me crazy because, one, it was done and is still being done, and two, because people are actually like feeding into it. Like, I have friends and family that like will not be around unvaccinated people. And it's like, that's a whole nother issue. But anyway,
I feel that. I feel
that's
that.
what it reminded me like of. Because the government's here saying, be afraid, follow what we say. And like so many times we just like blindly follow, just like this guy wants people to do.
Right.
And really, it's just for his own gain. Oh, it drives me nuts.
No, that's facts, because even though he might have copies of the manuscript, he tells his people, he got like a group of people following him, he won't give them copies. He's like, you have to learn this
Yeah.
through me. So he's like manipulating the energy. He's vague but suspenseful. And he cuts off the narrator when he speaks a lot. Even when he's like just trying to ask questions, he'll just like cut him off. But the narrator did notice when he first noticed him, that the energy of Robert was strong and confident, which I think you also need to have to manipulate people.
Yeah.
And then the narrator says once he does start the vague and suspenseful fear pushing, it makes himself feel awkward, unable to express himself, and having certain
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, which is really important because we do disconnect from that energy when we get manipulated out of it, unfortunately. And I think they kind of go into it later, but that for that it's like trying to call people out for it, but they still have to be in a place to be able to, receive that. Because
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I had a cousin once I was talking with, I forget what it was about. And I was like, it seems like you're trying to explain it to me, but you want me to be scared. And then once I said that, their energy changed. Their energy lightened up. They're like, oh, no, no, no. That wasn't my intention. But at the same time, if someone's not ready for it to hear it, to be made aware, they'll deny it, deny it, deny it. Maybe they'll come back later with oh, you were right. But it's easy for people in that
Yeah.
moment to deny.
It's a shame. I feel like most people are so close off to like having a conversation. And a lot of times I think people like think they're open to having a conversation, but they like will not really try to understand the other person's side. So it's really frustrating. But that's why like one of my goals, and I don't know if it's probably not completely possible, one of my goals is to like not even let other people's energy like affect me at all.
I feel
But I
you.
wanted to ask you, like, with that, like, how, like, do you have any ways of like, basically putting like a protection around yourself from that, or like any ways that you're able to keep the cool, like, without getting your energy sucked or like, whatever.
So I think a big thing for that is validation of expression. Like once you have your perspective and someone's not treating you right, they're not gonna always agree with you. So when you go to express it to them, don't let them validate your expression. Because if they like,
Mm.
no, I didn't treat you that way, but it's like, I'm telling you how I feel. So you can't invalidate that. I want to let you know for, my own form of expression. But before you
But
go,
sometimes it feels good, like when you're like, "Oh, this sucks," and the person's like, "Yeah, it does suck."
but I mean, realistically, you also cannot let that validate it. You feel me? Like whether it goes
Yeah,
really well or whether it goes really bad, you
yeah,
have to do it because, and that's the thing too, because I journaled, which is probably because I do think you cannot let things affect you. It's almost like senior citizens, no offense or anything, but they spend so much time alone. They know what they have to do, every day or whatever. And it's like they don't care, how slow they drive on the road affects other people. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
They know they're driving at this pace because they want to be safe. Like they'll say
yeah,
whatever they want to say in public. They're not caring about how it's going to make people feel per se. But when you journal and okay, I've journaled about this, maybe a couple of days in a row, or maybe last month, and it's still saying the same thing. So okay, this is what I experienced, and I think it's getting to the point where it's like, I mean, in certain situations you definitely might need to, but in some situations maybe you can just learn to casually let things go. But if it's like a work environment, then yeah, you're definitely gonna wanna. But I do think the more time you spend just like meditating, doing yoga, even like spending in nature, but just being alone in your groove on your path, you're more easily to even, I would even say, step back when the conflict happens and just be like, I think it's how you respond. Like, don't respond emotionally. If you can be like more monotone in your response, and maybe the person can call you out on it. Hey, you sound like you don't care. It's not that I don't care, but I'm not gonna, I can't give you the satisfaction of certain energy right now because I don't think
yeah.
it's it. Maybe we can talk about this later. So let's do the chakras: solar plexus, throat, heart. You wrote those?
Um, Honestly, I wrote it so long ago, I can't remember. I definitely wrote solar plexus because that's where like power
Right.
is, and it's a struggle for power.
True, true, true.
That was the one I felt the strongest about.
Okay, so yeah, I would agree with that. Even though this crystal is not yellow or orange or anything, This is Mystic Merlinite or Indigo Gabbro. And it's good for the solar plexus, the throat, and the third eye. Also, there's throat here, which is good for expressing yourself, especially in those moments and how you feel. Um, but this crystal, this is one of the crystals when I first started using it. I didn't know what it was. I saw it at a crystal show and I bought it because of how nice I thought it looked. And I told myself, I'm just going to carry this crystal around and see how it might affect me. And what I
Mm.
think it was like how much of my, I think it's like emotional energy, the power for the most part, energy and emotion. So it's like, well, where am I sending my emotional energy? And like, maybe even like predicting, like, okay, I know I need to talk to this person later, so I need to be in this type of level of energy so that, you know, the interaction or exchange goes well. Because maybe if I'm too high or too low, it'll throw the other person off some type of balance, you know? And
Like
what
center yourself before having interaction.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It
Yeah.
centers you before you have the interaction, balances you out so you can smoothly go through that interaction as needed. And I did kind of go over some other solar plexus crystals before. So I'm gonna do that again. But yeah. So humans to talk about specifically the insight, humans will see the universe as compromised of humans will see the universe as comprised of one dynamic energy used to sustain us in response to our expectations. But
Oh,
we're
I was actually gonna mention that expectations. Like, oh, it's so hard not to set expectations. But that's where we let like things fall short, you know? Like if we attach expectations to people or events, then you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, but that'd be hard because we see
Hmm.
the light, and that's the thing. The last insight is like, oh, be positive, be positive. So in a way, you are kind of, well, now I'm setting an expectation.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
think the point is like to be positive, but also be open to whatever's gonna happen, you know?
yeah, and be aware of what energy you're pushing on people is probably the best way to start it.
Mm.
Yeah, because yeah, you can be aware of what you're receiving, but I think to also be aware of like how you're pushing it out.
That's a really good point.
You know, and like,
Because, sorry, go
go ahead.
ahead.
And no, you go, you go.
I was just gonna say because, like, I don't realize how I come across sometimes, and
Right.
I've been listening to like a video where I'm like talking to Ra, and I'm like, oh my God, I sound so mean. I'm like, I had no idea I was coming across that way. I wasn't like upset in that moment, like, but I just sounded like, oh my God. Maybe we should just record ourselves like every day.
Maybe. Maybe. But look, I don't know specifically what. Maybe he was in college. But one time, I think after some meeting we had, you texted me like, "Hey, something you did or the way you said something made me feel X, Y, and Z." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna work on that because I don't want to make people feel like that, you know." But it's like I'm glad, you know, you had the strength to come tell me after, and it's because it's
I'm
easy.
better with text than in person.
But it's easy to dismiss it once you leave in that moment, like, you know,
Yeah.
like, but to be able to be like, no, no, I still want to express how I felt, you know, without, you know, trying to be insulting or anything, like, that's cool. I commend you for that.
Well, thank you.
Right. But yeah, just be also make a list of what makes you happy or
Mm.
what turns your mood around because you need to have ways to go get the energy yourself. So like, try not
Hmm.
to put other people on that list, you know. Like, yeah, it's okay to have people sometimes, but the point of getting the energy from the source is that we don't have to take it from each other. Like, we can give it to
Yeah.
each other as needed when needed, but Is there anything you can share before you go that you do that makes you happy when your mood is?
I have a few different things. Like I will listen to music or I'll sing. Sometimes I'll draw or write poetry. It really kind of depends. Getting out into nature, um, breathing, even just like like my shoulders are right now, they're right here, and I realize I'm like, oh, they're supposed to be down here.
I feel you.
Like breathe,
I feel
relax a little bit.
Yeah, because when you sit and breathe, it makes you conscious of other parts of your body.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and a lot of times, like, I don't, like, I'm sure this happens to other people too. Like, I'd be holding my breath and not realizing it. It's like, whew, okay, oxygen. Yeah, that's a thing.
Right. That's right. Big facts.
Um,
Yeah, this crystal also helps with creativity as well. So, Mystic Merlinite, Indigo Gabber.
I felt like I had a point I wanted to make on what you said. I can't remember, but I also had here each insight will present itself. Coincidences. Oh, oh my God. Coincidences everywhere. Because Will was trying to get him, like you said, to follow all of the coincidences and the familiar people because it was always for a reason, and like being open to interactions and possibilities. And then Jensen was trying to keep him away from any of that, any interaction, any openness, like at all. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, it's like Robert expected it all to go through him, and then he would decide how to filter it out and give it to the other
Yeah,
people, which I don't think he really intends on doing. He's just trying to manipulate people. And he
yeah,
tried Will, but Will is, I think, I'm like already in the eighth insight by now. So Will's very aware and doesn't allow him to suck in his energy.
yeah.
Crazy. Crazy. That was a good chapter.
Oh yeah, it was
Robert's like one of the only
my
people I
favorite.
remember for like
Huh?
Robert be one of the only people I remember. Like when I'm not reading the book, I'd be thinking about Robert.
Mm.
Facts. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good little 30. We'll be back next week. Again, folks, the book is online and is an audiobook. It's suggested to read. You're always welcome to join. Next week, we'll be back Tuesday, 7:30. I'll be on time. Thank you. I love you guys.
Love you.